Morning Break is live on location at the National Museum of the Mighty 8th Air Force. Today, we're honoring those who have served our country ahead of Veterans Day. We'll have more on the upcoming Veterans Day parade, plus a look inside the B-17 Flying Fortress that's the centerpiece of the Mighty 8th Museum.
Well, welcome into Morning Break. You are taking a look at where we usually are on a Friday morning, a beautiful look at the city of Savannah, but we are in a different place with a different view of the city of Savannah this morning.
We sure are. It's a beautiful day here at the Mighty 8th Air Force Museum for Veterans Day.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting ready for what will be a busy weekend for folks who, as we celebrate our veterans in all of our communities, we've got activities and events and ceremonies that are happening in the Low Country, the Coastal Empire, and a lot of planning goes into this, and it's a great opportunity for folks to go out and to celebrate so many people in our community because we have such a big military
And people will be celebrating here. This is one of the real jewels of Chatham County. You know, I've been here when veterans have come through. It is very moving. I have been here when people who flew these planes, were fighters on these planes were here. And it is just to see them, maybe seeing it for the first time in 70 years, is a very touching experience and something that they, of course, will be remembering again tomorrow when we celebrate Veterans Day.
And before we get started, we have to extend our greatest thanks to every veteran who has served this country, continues to serve.
And we want to let you know it is our honor not only to be here today and to bring you this special edition of Morning Break, but also live coverage of the Savannah Veterans Day Parade, which is coming up tomorrow. Fingers crossed that the weather's going to cooperate and everything will be good. But, you know, it's November. It's going to be chilly. Maybe
bring a jacket.
Yeah, it should be nice.
Downtown Savannah, Mike Seela will be hosting with Mike Ball, the Vice Chair of American Legion Post 135, which is the birthplace of the 8th Air Force.
That's right. And some other WTOC members will be out there at the parade, too.
Yeah, it should be a great time. And like we said, you can watch that at WTOC. You can also get down there and enjoy it. And we'll hit on some of the other community events and ceremonies that are coming up throughout the morning.
Yeah, so throughout the hour, we're going to be taking a look around the museum. We're also going to be taking a look ahead to Veterans Day, but we want to start with a few Veterans Day facts.
That's right.
Of course, we always celebrate Veterans Day on November 11th, regardless of what day of the week that date falls on. That's because we are remembering the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month when the armistice was signed and Germany surrendered in World War I, and that is why this was once called Armistice Day.
Yes.
And they changed it to Veterans Day decades later, which is now what we're enjoying. But another fun fact about Veterans Day, as of 2023, 78% of American veterans served during wartime, 22% served totally in times of peace. Also, the percentage of U.S. population with military experience has declined, according to data from the Census Bureau. It is amazing when you hear that number, 78%. Yeah. It's so high, but obviously wartime gets more people to come out there and enlist to serve their country.
That's right. And another thing that's important to remember is every Veterans Day there is a theme. This year's is service, and we are honoring all who have served and continue to serve at home and abroad in any branch of the military. That's Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, Space Force, and even that National Guard as well.
Yeah.
And it's also important to point out that we also honor active duty military on Veterans Day as well. It's not only folks who have served, and you know, it's just a great day that everybody in the country really takes a minute to say thank you and pay tribute to those who served and did it for us. Is what they did.
And when you look back at our country and the people who have served, we've lost so many veterans. We're losing World War II veterans rapidly, but it is great to be able to still tell those stories. And I know that there's a specific story specific to the Mighty 8th Air Force that a lot of people who work in this building, and people like you mentioned, the veterans who have come back here, who have been anticipating this for quite some time. And we're pleased to be bringing you a first look at the new trailer of an upcoming Apple TV Plus series called Masters of the Air. Take a look at this.
When you look at it, you don't pay attention to what's really going on. It's kind of beautiful.
We came from every corner of the country with a common purpose.
Go, 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 go!
To bring the war to Hitler's doorstep.
These daylight missions, suicide.
And what's the move?
We lead our boys through it.
We're getting through this. Even if the odds are stacked against us.
First time in the sawmill, boys. Let's rack 'em up and knock 'em down.
Tom Hanks, Steven Spielberg, we know when they come together for a project, it is going to be historically accurate and truly a once-in-a-lifetime film. And this is a 9-part series. We have to remember that, and they're really going to be able to tell that story.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's coming out in January, so we still got a couple more months. We'll get, I'm sure, full trailers that will tell a little bit more of the story. But it's based off of a Donald Miller book. I interviewed Donald a couple of years ago when the museum was celebrating its 25th anniversary. It's been 13 years since The Pacific came out. 23 years since Band of Brothers.
Yes.
So the anticipation behind this has been building. I think a lot of people were excited about it. It is unfortunate that there are veterans who are not alive anymore that may have been around 10 or 15 years ago that won't be able to see their story. But for those who were a part of it, who have family members who will see themselves represented, it's interesting. You've interviewed Lucky Luckadoo, a member of the 100.
I've flown a B-17 with Lucky Luckadoo.
I looked in the list of characters and cast members. I did not see his name, but yet he will be portrayed in this in some sense as a member of that.
They are so excited about this at the Mighty Eighth Museum, not only because they have been anticipating it so long, but they know the impact that Band of Brothers had on World War II museums. And they expect the same bump here, maybe as much as 50-60% more people coming through the museum in the year after.
We'll talk about that.
Amazing. All right, well, we mentioned the city of Savannah being behind us, and after the break here on Morning Break, we will take a look back at the process and the people who took the Mighty Eighth Museum's signature attraction from a pile of parts to the finest static display of a B-17 in the world. Well, welcome back to Morning Break. The Mighty Eighth Museum's pristinely restored B-17 bomber is a lot like the place it was named for, because the city of Savannah was not always as beautiful as it is now, and only became what it is through years of preservation work that touched the lives of many veterans. It arrived in pieces and on a prayer. The Mighty 8th Air Force Museum receiving the first disassembled parts of a B-17 bomber in January of 2009. But the work to restore this flying fortress was already underway.
There are only about 45 of them left in the world out of an original 15,000. So this one's rare.
So too was the commitment to rebuild the Warbird. The Mighty 8th Museum would not be complete until it could display one of the weapons most critical to America's victory in World War II, which required remarkable effort and patience. It took the museum 14 years to acquire a B-17. It took a total of 150 volunteers 12 years to bring it back to life. Work that will be a lasting reward for generations to come.
In the Warbird community, they really have elevated the museum by the work they've done on the city of Savannah. It is recognized again as one of the finest static restorations, and we have other groups that are now undertaking restoration or reconstruction of a B-17 now come to us and reference the work here at the city of Savannah.
That accomplishment is as impressive as the final product, produced by a team that started as novices with no real budget, but are now considered the best in the B-17 restoration business.
The right people showed up and we got the right support And most restorations in the United States of warbirds are done by, they have a very wealthy background somewhere, somebody throwing him. We did it on nickel and dime money, but just expertise.
This B-17 was. Okay. Well, that expertise was built as this B-17 was over time and on the fly. Sam Curry was a past project manager of the B-17 restoration. Sam, thank you so much for joining us today. You had aviation experts on your team. You had people who'd never been around B-17 before, but mostly you had dedicated veterans who wanted to pay tribute to those who served before them.
That's very true. We were surprised the amount of people that did show up and want to be volunteers. We've had doctors, lawyers, people who had no aviation experience at all, but they loved history and they loved the airplane that you see behind you right here. And we took it from a shell that was really nasty, really dirty, into what it is now, which is pristine. The only airplane with 3 working power turrets in it in the world. And you see what it is, and we're proud of it. We are really proud, and people love to do it.
You can sense that pride every minute you walk in here because everybody wants to see the B-17 first. And you had more than 150 people over the years that you worked on this. It started with a group of 9.
Yes, yeah, it did. And there's the gentleman who started this thing, of course, Jerry McLaughlin, Jimmy Grismer, Mr. Walt Brown, and they started this with the one desire is to bring this airplane in here and make it the best in the world, and they succeeded. It really is good, and sadly Mr. Walt Brown and Jimmy Grismer are no longer with us, but we do have their remembrance, and we're continuing on their work.
Right. And Sam, of course, is a past commander of American Legion Post 135, downtown Savannah, the birthplace of the 8th Museum.
Yes, sir.
I know you are very much looking forward to Veterans Day tomorrow there. How will you be celebrating there?
Well, we've already started, and this is a week-long event for us of all the things that we get into. And tomorrow we will be, everybody's ganging up to go to the parade itself. We'll have a float in and we'll do the stuff there. Mm-hmm. And then afterwards we'll be feeding the veterans of the Savannah area in our ballroom upstairs, and we usually have 350, 400 people come through to feed.
Well, Sam, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for your service, and please thank all the veterans that you see tomorrow.
Yes, sir.
On behalf of WTOC.
And thank you.
When we come back on Morning Break, Kyle's going to give us another look inside that Apple TV documentary coming out about the mighty 8th Air Force.
The National Museum of the Mighty 8th Air Force tells the story of the entire branch of the Air Force, dozens of bomber groups and fighter groups. But there is one group in particular that is about to have its story told to a wide audience through a new Apple TV Plus series called Masters of the Air. It is a series more than a decade in the making, and today I'm joined by the CEO and president of the museum, Scott Lair. The excitement has got to be there because I know that this is something people around this museum, around the Mighty 8th, have been thinking about and hearing about for quite some time.
Indeed, the excitement is really palpable. It has been a decade plus in the making. The museum has been involved in the production since those initial days. Interviews were conducted here at the museum with 8 veterans. Family members more recently have been interviewed as part of the production, and it's finally here.
When you put names like Steven Spielberg, Tom Hanks, Gary Getzman, the crew that put Band of Brothers and the Pacific on are now taking this story to a wide stream audience. And this is something that is going to generate even more excitement around the Mighty 8th.
Indeed. I mean, that's an exclusive company, and the museum is indeed honored that they're going to focus on the story of the Mighty 8th Air Force in World War II. The use of our collections shows the value of this museum as an organization that preserves history, showcases the history of our nation's most storied Air Force that got its start here in Savannah in January of '42, and then quickly transferred to England and took took the fight to the German Air Force, to the Luftwaffe, and ultimately played an integral part in the success of D-Day and the liberation of Nazi-occupied Europe.
There are no battlefields that people can go visit. The National Museum of the Mighty 8th Air Force is kind of that home for people who want to find out more beyond the 100th. They can come here, they can get the full story of what the Mighty 8th was all about.
That's so true. I mean, you can't go to a battlefield in the sky like you can go to Antietam, Gettysburg, Concord, Lexington. So you have to come to the Mighty 8th Museum to get a real sense and understanding and appreciation of what it was like to be engaged in aerial combat at 25,000 feet, 50 below zero, surviving on prayers, luck, and oxygen. It was otherworldly, was something that had never been experienced before. The 8th was the first to engage in high altitude precision bombing, and all those stories are here at the National Museum of the Mighty 8th Air Force.
I know you've only probably seen as much as the rest of us have as far as images and clips and things like that. What is your feeling when you see that, when you know that, hey, they're telling our story, they're telling the Mighty 8th story to a huge audience?
I'm glad for the veterans, the few that are remaining, but they'll tell you they're not the heroes. It's the 26,000 who never came home. And it's really for them. It's for the teenagers and young men who gave the last full measure of devotion so that we can enjoy today the freedoms that we have.
And it will be a story that they'll tell again on Apple TV Plus, debuting in January. So we've still got a little bit of time to wait. But the story of those who did come home, those who never made it home, those who were captured and survived, all of those stories being captured in that one series again that's coming out on Apple TV Plus. Now, when we come back a little bit later on here on Morning Break, Scott and I are going to talk a little bit more about the future plans here at the National Museum of the Mighty 8th Air Force that involves expansion, and we'll let you know where they are in that process coming up.
The Mighty 8th Air Force Museum is a capsule of exhibits that brings honor to men and women who have served our country. Here to help me spotlight women Air Force service pilots is Heather Thies from here at the museum. This is such an incredible exhibit you have here that just is set apart from any other. What makes it so unique here at the museum?
Well, this exhibit honors the women who were able to free up the male pilots who ended up serving in the 8th Air Force, so to free them up to fight. And these women really are the unsung heroes that are often overlooked. So it's really important to honor them.
Yeah, and during that time, this was so unprecedented. Speak to that.
Well, it really was. The WASPs were not actually active duty military. They were not considered part of the military at the time. 25,000 women applied for this program. 1,830 were selected. 1,102 actually qualified. So, I mean, that is huge numbers that didn't qualify because they were so specific in how they wanted them trained. They had to be able to fly every type of plane. These women had to fly all of them. Absolutely all of them. I believe it's 77 different types of planes.
It's such a comprehensive exhibit you have here. It's a little bit like walking through a maze. Walk us through this specific area that we're in right now.
Well, this is all about the women and the WASP once they're trained, and this is the most famous of all of the WASP photos with Pistol Pack and Mama behind them as they're strutting off in their gear so that they're not cold. Right. They had different uniforms. They did earn pins, the wing pins, just like pilots in the military did. And so it's really just so important to showcase all of the different types of training they did and the different roles that they performed during the war.
This exhibit truly shows how they've built this legacy. How have these women changed aviation for future generations?
Well, these women changed aviation in that they earned so much respect by the other pilots, by the men. General Hap Arnold was a huge fan of the program, even though it was dismantled before the end of the war. Much to his chagrin, he was not very happy about that. And then the thing most people don't realize is that they are not actually in the military. They are not given any military benefits. The 38 women who were killed during the war are not even, their families aren't even given money to ship them home for burial. And so it's not until 1977 that they're actually given veteran status. So many, many years after the war are they finally given this respect and that they are due. And now, of course, they have, you know, a museum at Sweetwater, Texas, where they trained, and they're really starting to get the recognition that they actually deserve.
Yeah, and to that point, we're obviously standing in an incredible museum. Talk about how important education is. It's one of the best ways that we can honor these veterans.
It really is. The best way is to learn from the past, so of course you don't repeat the past. And it's also, you know, to see how far we've come, how much farther we might need to go, but it's just so imperative to learn, you know, as I always tell the kids here, you know, nobody's perfect, but you should, and everybody makes mistakes, but you must learn from those mistakes. And so that's why this museum and this exhibit in particular are so important in educating ourselves of all ages.
Literally targets on their backs and changing history for all of us. Thank you so much, Heather. We appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
These women were so remarkable, and let's repeat that. 1977, that's how long it took for them to be recognized as veterans.
I mean, it was just an amazing time, an amazing generation. I mean, even civilian women were doing what they could. There are stories of young women, young girls, acting as lookouts on Tybee Island, watching the coast. It was a time when everybody did what they could.
Yeah, the image of Rosie the Riveter, I think, is the one that everybody recognizes. But the idea that these women were in the cockpit, they were flying, they were doing flights that ultimately the men would get credit for and that would go down in history, but they paved the way for them, which is really cool. Well, we're talking about these stories of the men and women and their brave actions throughout history, those who have served our country. Michaela Romero takes us to a spot in the coastal empire where those stories and actions are being remembered no matter their age.
When we say the Pledge of Allegiance, it's our promise to honor the red, white, and blue. And a local rehabilitation center here in Savannah is doing just that and honoring the men and women who have served on behalf of our flag and our freedom.
Our census changes pretty often. As of today, it's 13. We have 13.
Just like the 13 stripes on the flag, that is how many brave veterans reside at Riverview Health and Rehabilitation Center.
They have ranged from early 30s all the way up into almost 100, and they always have amazing stories. A lot of them talk about their times overseas, traveling, meeting their spouses over there, getting married, having children.
Veterans like Barry Gaughan, Alfred Lynn, and Aaron Stewart may have served at different times, but they can agree they all felt a wave of emotions before departing to protect our country.
A little scared, wanted to see things.
They went to a lot of different places.
Sent me to South Carolina for basic, from there to Fort Sam Houston, Texas, from there to Fort Dix, New Jersey.
And saw many new faces.
Met this one girl that was super nice, super nice.
What was her name?
I can't even remember.
Where were you?
Hawaii.
You were in Hawaii when you met her? What was she doing?
She's just walking along the side of the road.
But the men and women who were serving right beside them are what kept them going, serving each other as reminders of why they were there.
It was serving the country, our country.
It meant to serve the country and do the best I could. That's wait till it's all over.
And Veterans Day is a reminder to us all, the community, to show our gratitude to those heroes who sacrificed their lives to protect us and our country.
We do it seasonally with Veterans Day, Memorial Day, and whatnot, but it's important to recognize our veterans for what they've done for not only our country, but for us as a facility, and just to honor them for whatever, whether it was 2 years or 4 years or their entire lives, for them to share those stories with us and just give them that recognition that they deserve.
In Savannah, Michaela Romero, WTOC.
When our live edition of Morning Break from the National Museum of the Mighty 8th Air Force continues this morning, we are looking at growth and expansion here at the museum. After the break, we'll take a look at some of the changes that are coming. We'll be right back. Right now we're inside the art gallery, just off of the combat gallery where we're set up today. And soon this area will be transformed into another learning opportunity to tell the story of the Mighty 8th Air Force here at the National Museum of the Mighty 8th. We are joined by the CEO and President Scott Lair again to talk about this major capital expansion project, the opportunity to tell a little bit more about the Mighty 8th because history is so important to continue to tell folks. You've got some renderings here. Kind of give us an idea of what's to come. What is down the line?
Well, excitement to come. The museum has been open 27 years, and it's long past time for some improvements, some new exhibitions. Collections have grown. We're going to be bringing out new objects, new artifacts to help tell the remarkable stories of the boys and men and the women of the 8th Air Force in World War II.
This is the opportunity to not only expand and tell more of the story of the Mighty 8th Air Force, but also to upgrade, to add some additions to what's already there, and even kind of reconfigure what's already there. How is this going to work in maintaining the museum and continuing to be able to operate once you're doing this?
The plan is to interrupt the museum operation and the visitor experience as little as possible. We finished phase 1. Phase 2 will begin in January of 24, so just around the corner, followed by phase 3. And the program now, according to the schedule, we'll cut the ribbon about 2 years from now. So the fall of 2025, a new museum telling the rich stories of the Mighty 8th Air Force. You
can't do anything like this without money, so obviously this is a major capital campaign in raising the money. We'll give folks an update on where you stand right now and what you still have left.
The campaign is in a great place, 75% towards its goal of $12 million. So we've raised $9 million, have a bit left to go. But we're phasing the project, and money continues to come in. Donors are very excited about the vision of the museum, investing in the vision of the museum. So we're confident we'll be able to stay on schedule and present a new and better product to our visitors in just a few short years.
You mentioned 75%, more than 75% of the resources and the assets of the museum are not even on regular display. That's also part of this expansion, is to bring more of what you have out for the public to be able to see.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. To have encounters with new and fresh collections, be able to tell those stories with new objects. It really is going to be a new day for the museum, and therefore a truly rich experience for those who come to visit the museum.
And Scott Lair, President, CEO of the museum, the National Museum of the Mighty 8th Air Force. Thank you so much for joining us today. And again, as he mentioned, the opportunity to expand, to continue to tell the story of our veterans who spent time here in Savannah, who flew out and fought the Germans overseas, all as part of the rich history of the Mighty 8th Air Force, a story that we are so lucky to have right here in our own backyard in the Coastal Empire.
Well, welcome back to this very special Veterans Day edition of Morning Break. Now, you've seen the outside of the B-17, but let's take a look at the inside. Meteorologist Andrew Gordon gives us an inside look at this flying fortress. Take a look.
Well, today I am here with Heather from the Mighty 8th, Director of Education.
Yes.
And you can't miss this. This is a huge piece of history. It's sitting here in the middle of the museum here in Savannah, Georgia. Tell me a little bit about this B-17, the Flying Fortress, which has a little bit of history that we have come to find out is very important to our city we love so much.
Yes, the B-17 was the most used plane of the 8th Air Force, not in entirely in the whole Air Force, but in the 8th it was. And this particular plane is named in honor of the real city of Savannah. This is not the actual real city of Savannah. The city of Savannah actually raised money to purchase a plane to go off into battle in World War II, and they named it the City of Savannah. They christened it. Here in Savannah, it was the 5,000th airplane to leave Hunter to head off to World War II.
Wow, and after all that time, it is back here in the city that it was funded by and made from, and it's gone through a huge restoration process. Of course, we weren't here whenever this was flying, but this looks like it just went off the assembly line, and it's been quite the process for you guys to get to that point.
Yes, this plane is over 75 years old. The B-17, yes, we've had this plane for about, it'll be 15 years in January, and our volunteers have worked steadfastly to bring it back to what it is right now. As you see before us, it is almost done, but as they say, it will never actually be done, mainly because they don't want it to be done because they like working on it so much.
Sure, hey, fair enough. I think now the cool thing is that we can actually get inside, not a view that a lot of people get to see. So the outside, beautiful, shiny, but inside, it's beautiful in its own way as well.
So let me show you inside the B-17 so you can see all the hard work that our volunteers have worked on.
And this is even cooler because a lot of people don't get to see something like this.
Correct, yes, to see the inside, and it's being restored to look exactly like it did during World War II. There are certain differences, of course, because it comes from different places, but yes, so they've been working tirelessly to clean it and restore it to just the way it would have looked back in World War II.
Well, they're obviously, this plane not built for somebody over 6 feet tall
Correct.
in mind, but it's very efficient. It has the parts it needs and nothing else.
Exactly. It was, they needed to build these planes quickly. They needed to get them off to battle so that World War II could be won. A very clear-cut, to-the-point plane.
And that's all you needed. It obviously helped win the war, and there's so many cool pieces of this plane that we'll get to see, and we're gonna go up to the front of the plane next so that we can see what it's like.
All right,
so we're leaving this area. What is next for us?
We are heading to the radio room, which actually works.
Okay.
Yes, we can actually transmit through this very extensive radio system.
So this was arguably one of the most important places inside the entire plane.
Yes, this is the radio compartment, the radio room, and the radio operator had several different types of radios to speak, of course, with, even though they didn't really communicate with other planes, they did, of course, have the capability to do so. It was also to communicate within the plane because the plane itself is so loud while it's flying. You have, of course, machine guns firing, 4 ridiculously loud engines. Any holes that, from bullet holes and such in the plane, wind is blowing in. It is just loud. So you have to have on your headset and your little throat mic to be able to communicate to make sure that everybody's okay, that they're breathing correctly because of the freezing cold temperatures up there. You don't want your oxygen line freezing, and to make sure, of course, nobody's been shot or injured, that sort of thing.
Wow. And then going forward, we have kind of the most intimidating portion of the plane going forward, which you've only seen in really movies unless you're lucky enough to see it in real life.
Yes, and that is the bomb bay and the gangplank, basically, as they called it, because it is a very narrow surface to walk from the radio room up into the cockpit. You can see where the pilot, co-pilots, top turret gunners all flew and sat, because it really gives you a sense of what it was like to be in this plane as well.
Oh yeah.
And all the work that they've done.
All right, Heather, so now we're in the most unique perspective, the pilot seat. Not many people have been able to sit in one of these seats. And you and I are in normal clothes, but there's a reason why they were in bomber jackets, right? Because as a meteorologist, I know the temperature goes down the more you go up. And these would fly at, 25,000 feet or so, where it would be -50 or 60 degrees. So speaking about the weather, There's a saying that the 8th had.
Yes, and that is the 8th was never turned back by the enemy, but they were turned back by weather. Weather could be catastrophic for the 8th Air Force. In predicting it, having bad weather over the target, bad weather when you were in the plane. You know, you could freeze to it. It's, you know, colder than your freezer in here in these planes since they're not heated. And frostbite, it was, yes, the enemy never turned the 8th back, but weather did.
This is where everything is meticulously planned and worked on to get the plane that we just came from to look as amazing as it is.
Yes, this is where, you know, all the tools and their machine shop and all of that, their welding, all of this, yes, this is where they store and work on everything, their manuals from World War II, everything that they found, things that they're currently working on the plane and for us, because they never want to stop working on all of this. And now they just keep finding more and more tasks for them to do, which is fantastic.
And what would you say about the heart of these men and women that come in here to volunteer their time?
They are absolutely amazing because, you know, when we got this plane almost 15 years ago, we laughed that, you know, their slogan was basically, we don't know what we don't know. And so they had to basically just throw themselves into the deep end and get the old manuals from back at, you know, from the 40s and just start reading and discussing and getting in touch with the B-17 community and really figuring out and cleaning. I mean, the plane took 3, 4, 5 years just to clean.
Wow. If you guys want to come see this and all the other planes that they have here at the Mighty 8th, definitely well worth your time. All those hours that were put into it, they were definitely well worth it. Heather, thank you for giving us this tour today.
Thank you for coming.
Also happening this weekend, the local nonprofit SD Gunner Fund is hosting its Salute to Service event Saturday evening. It is happening at the Bellhaven event venue in Richmond Hill from 6 to 10 p.m. There will be food, games, awards, and our Jamie Erdahl will be the MC. Tickets are on sale now for $40. For more details on where you can get yours, head to WTOC.com. Of course, SD Gunner Fund, one of the great organizations in our community that helps veterans, pairing them with service animals. But this weekend, our entire community, our entire country will be saying thank you to all veterans.
That's right.
Yeah, and we want to let you know really quickly about some parades and events that are going on. Bluffton has their parade through Historic Bluffton, which starts at 9 o'clock tomorrow. In Beaufort County and Beaufort, they've got their parade at 10 o'clock. And then if you can hurry and you can get down Richmond Hill at 11 o'clock, they have their ceremony at J.F. Gregory. So a lot of different places and communities holding events. And, of course, we got the big parade in Savannah.
And the state parks are offering free admission tomorrow. So something for everybody to do on their Veterans Day to salute their veterans.
That's right. Don't forget to watch our Veterans Day parade in Savannah right here on WTOC, 9 o'clock tomorrow morning with Mike Sela and Mike Ball.
Yeah, and no matter where you are, where you're watching, thank you so much for joining us today. Be sure to say thank you to all of those who have served our country. And we thank you so much for joining us here on this special edition of Morning Break, live from the National Museum of the Mighty 8th Air Force.